Hey everyone, Logan Hertz with Hazeltine LLC. We're super excited to have back with us. It's been way too long. DeAndre Clayton of Clayton Financial Solutions. DeAndre, how you doing?
Oh man, I'm on the mend right now, man. I had a little bit too much fun on the cruise. I had the drink packaged. I won't say I didn't meet the drinking quotas. I will let you know that. But recovering right now from a little illness from there. But I'm good. I'm happy to be here with you though, Logan. It's been a
Yeah,
long.
well, we're super glad you're willing to soldier through this because that tells me you know how important this is, and
Yes,
you soldier
absolutely.
on through and do it because we've got content to create and there are misconceptions to address, and we got to make sure we keep putting the truth out there. So, given that DeAndre is really the resident expert on velocity banking, the first lien HELOC, not so much me, I thought we'd talk about it, and I thought we'd go through a real life case and just kind of do some real time problem solving because I think what I hope people will see from this, it'll be a bit off the cuff, but I want people to see that the first lien HELOC can be a great tool to solve a lot of financial problems. It's not just a more effective means of paying down and paying off your house, although it is that. So I've kind of anonymized and removed personal information, but what you're going to see is based on a real life case of someone that I spoke with.
Ooh,
So this would be just the first lien HELOC by itself.
all right.
You can see we got about a $240,000 loan balance. 7.6% is the current interest rate. This particular person has about 7,800 in monthly net income and 2,300 in monthly expenses. Now we'll look at this a bit deeper when we go to the other spreadsheet, right? And then homeowners insurance and property taxes. And you can see we're going to pay off the house in a little under 5 years in this example. If we were to just take the vanilla first lien HELOC, the 30-year equivalent rate would be 1.2%. So this person does currently have a mortgage. They're maybe like 3 or 4 years into a 30-year mortgage or something like that.
Okay.
And so obviously this would pay it off in 5 years rather than say 25 years.
Nice.
Okay. Now let's take a look at the situation a bit more in depth. So $2,300 down here. This is the sum of his monthly expenses, not including his housing expenses and not including his debt obligations, right?
Gotcha.
So that 2,300 is not all inclusive. The reason why I start with 2,300 is because what DeAndre and I are gonna look at now is his debts. So the first lien HELOC can be a great tool for refinancing and optimizing not just your home payoff, but paying off all of your debts. This is one of the most typical scenarios you'll see with velocity banking is we have a number of debts we want to pay off. How do we pay them off in the most efficient, effective manner? And velocity banking with first lien HELOC allows us to do that, allows us to pay it off a lot faster, right? So you can see here he's got, a car loan. Here's his home again. He's got a student loan, two student loans, one on his wife, one on himself. And then he has some credit card debts and then an HVAC loan, right? So, and this is where I'm going to kind of defer to DeAndre to do some problem solving. If we look through these,
Okay.
a couple of things stand out, right? So there's a couple of 0% loans here. There's a 0% credit card and a 0% HVAC loan. I'm
Hmm.
assuming, DeAndre, it probably wouldn't make any sense to refinance these into the first lien HELOC, right? We're probably just going to leave those at 0%, keep making those monthly payments, right?
Correct. Yeah, I would leave the 0% for monthly payments until last. So I'll kind of treat it like I'll treat it like a high balance on a snowball, or we can use a debt avalanche in this particular situation.
Yep. And then another obvious point would be, well, this credit card at 27%, it would make sense to refinance it. But what he's doing, it looks like, if you look at the comments here, is he's actually doing a balance transfer. So he's going to balance transfer this to the 0% one here, right? So that's
Okay.
where this 5,700 comes from. So he's balance transferring 5,700 to a 0% credit card, which is a smart thing to do.
Yeah, that is
Um,
smart.
so
Okay.
that'll give him 18 months of 0% interest.
100%.
And
Gotcha.
now, and I know this particular credit card. I think there's actually no transaction fee either. So not only will he pay no interest, there's not a balance transfer fee either. So
Nice. Nice.
that's a good deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's look through some of these others. As you're looking through these loans, right? Keep in
Mm-hmm.
mind, so that there's two things, right? So when we refinance one of these loans into the HELOC, obviously the loan becomes paid off. So the most important thing that does for us is it frees up the cash flow. That's why this monthly payment column here is important.
Right.
So as an example, if we paid off this truck here, that would free up $450 of monthly cash flow, right?
Yep.
Which then goes into the HELOC, which can then be applied to pay down your other debts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a number of things that it does for us. But the beauty of it is we now have options. We don't have to refinance any of this into the first lien HELOC if we don't want to, or we can, right? So his house is $350,000. So what I'm gonna also put in here, I don't know if I
Is
put
that
it
that's
in.
the value of the house? The 350?
Yeah. So
Okay.
so we can get 90% loan to value roughly. It's technically 8.8999. So we'll say 89 times 350,000, right?
Okay.
So that's 311,000 roughly. So the line of credit
Would
will
be
be 311,000.
500.
That's how much we have to work with, right? So his current balance on his house is 238,000. But the line of credit we'll get access to is 311,000, right? So that's where we can
Right.
stack on more principal balance into this if we want to. So DeAndre, if you're looking at this situation, what are your thoughts just off the top of your head? What do you think makes sense?
Yeah. So as I look at the situation, I mean, after the 311.5 and we replaced the mortgage, we're now sitting at $73,231.98 left. That is the unused equity, right?
Yep, I'll add that in
Um,
here so you can see that. So what DeAndre is pointing out is
or that
unused equity to start, right? So we'll have $72,000 worth of equity free and clear when we refinance the mortgage in the first lien HELOC, and we can use that $72,000 unused equity to pay off some of these debts, whatever makes the most sense. We probably couldn't pay off all of them, and that probably wouldn't make
no,
sense. That's
yeah,
that's what we have to work with. So now we kind of work through what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, right?
yeah, no, no, we definitely wouldn't pay off all of them. At best, I would probably start off with the truck. Um, and as I've finished with the truck, the next one would probably be the student loan after that. So,
Okay,
uh,
so let's look at that. So we would say these two together. So the sum of that is down here. This is going to get a bit confusing, and I apologize. It won't be the best visual. So we're going to start with these two. So that's the mortgage plus the truck. So this is going to be
right,
to start with, right?
yep,
So that means let's go back over to our first lien HELOC sheet. That means the balance we're going to have is not 238,000. That's just the mortgage because we're going to add in this
the
truck
truck.
payment. So that's 259, 532.
Uh-huh.
Oops, roughly. Okay.
Yep. And we have to add
Now we got to add these in, right? Yeah, because if we add both of these, right? So this is if we didn't pay off any of the debts, That's what our monthly expenses would be, right?
Mhm.
If we didn't
Correct.
pay off any of the debts. And our principal loan balance would be lower. But we're going to pay this one off. So we freed up $456 roughly of monthly cash flow, right? So if we go back here, this actually drops down. So I'll actually calculate it over here. So here we have this minus this. So now our monthly expenses dropped from 4,700 to 4,300.
Yep. And I would typically at this point I would probably stop right here and I would scroll down, right? Just to see what we're on track for. So I see the payoff time. Is it saying the payoff time for 11 years? Is that what it's at?
11-year payoff time. The 30-year equivalent rate is still under 3%.
Okay.
And I think what we're looking at too is,
Equity gain.
yeah, so how, as an example, let's say we're going to look at just the car. The car principal balance is 21,000. So how long does it take us to gain 21,000 in equity, meaning pay off that
Correct.
car, right?
There you go. That's
So
exactly
here,
what I do.
so we're looking at this. I learned this from a guy named DeAndre Clayton. He's really
Oh
smart.
my goodness.
I might have learned it from Jason Cahill too. But yeah, so month 11, we've paid off 21,000, right? So really in 11 months, call it a year, we've paid off the car.
And how long was the original loan on the car?
72 months.
Okay. All right. So we've cut off quite a bit then
Yeah.
from that. It's
So we
nice.
did it in 12 months instead of 72 months. We paid off the car. And we freed up that $450 in cash flow, right?
Stuff.
So once we've gotten to that point, okay, so let's now so the next step, according to you, DeAndre, would be what? And
So
how are you kind of prioritizing these loans?
so one, I'm prioritizing it by
Is how
what
much
is
cash flow it frees up?
yeah, what is the cash flow it's freezing up? Right now, we have 18 months of space on some of the other loans or the debts.
Right.
So I don't necessarily need to attack them right now. Right?
Mhm.
Now I want to attack them close to that 18-month time period, but I don't have to attack them at this very minute. So
Mhm.
I can say, okay, well, now that we've gotten to that point, I would look at what the balance is when I finish paying off the truck, which is the original
Right.
amount, right? Close to the
Right.
original amount
Right.
at 11
So
months.
so let's say we paid off the truck. That means this is now
Right.
gone.
That's gone.
So
Right.
this is now gone.
Right.
And that means this is what's left over, the sort of the
Right.
original mortgage balance. So let's reset
Right.
that. So now we're at 238, 268.02. Okay.
Right.
And so now we've paid off the truck by refinancing into the HELOC in less than a year. And we've saved ourselves that $450 of cash flow.
Yeah. So
Okay.
now
And
we
so
go
now
after the rest of the cash flow.
yeah, so
Yeah.
now it'll be less than 10 years remaining. We're a year in,
Hmm.
right? And all of these balances will be lower now because we've continued to make payments.
Absolutely. There you go. That's why it was like after
Well, and
some time, I was like,
we can kind of estimate what it would be, but um, so you're saying you would probably what, hit the student loan next?
yeah, I would only hit the student loan next because they're paying them the minimum payment on it, it looks like. I don't know how much they would truly be paying on it because sometimes you have your minimum payments and what the payment the client actually normally makes towards it, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm,
sometimes really the cash flow effect might be more than $122. They may be sending $200 there every month. They may be
mhm.
sending 220 there every month, but
Right.
they may be
Correct.
required to send 122, right?
Correct. Correct.
Um, and so since that's the main balance that is like open and charging, I would probably go after that because they've moved the other debt to that slate edge card, right?
Mhm.
So
Well,
that,
actually,
or are the
now that
rest of those?
I mean,
Oh yeah,
we
you got
might want to hit.
Discover card down here. You got a few of them they're still charging. Okay, so this 8,576. Now it says NA until July 2024. Oh, well, this is a previous client, so I apologize on that. So
Yeah,
it's
I
all
don't remember what this one, it could have been 0% interest until that time.
for a 10 year.
So,
Okay,
so I'm assuming this would be probably
gotcha. Okay,
a
so
double digit interest rate. So we probably want to pay off
in
this one.
in that case, I would actually
And
grab
honestly,
both of them.
yeah, same thing with this one because the 0% would be close to expiring, right? Or closer, right?
Well, truthfully, I'm not necessarily that worried about that 0% yet. I would probably go ahead and attack the CC Discover and the CC Synchrony.
Well, this one's 0%.
That's 0% too.
Yeah.
All right, so
This one is 0% for 36 months. So we'd probably
okay,
leave that
yeah,
one alone. But yeah, I think we would hit this one.
yeah. So
So
let's
we
knock
are,
out the
as
8.5.
we're going through this, I want people to see a couple of things. First of all, yeah, you you don't want to look at just the interest rate, right?
Balances.
Notice the first debt that we decided to pay off, it wasn't because it had the highest interest rate. It was because it freed up the most monthly cash flow.
Hmm.
Now, that's not to say we ignore the interest rate, right? Like if this one had actually been charging 27%, if it wasn't being balance transferred to a 0% card, we would definitely pay that one off first.
Yeah, because it wouldn't have been $100 payment. It would have been significantly higher. So yeah, we would be definitely taking care of that. Um, so yeah, I would go after the NA until July 2024 then.
Yeah, so probably the
And
Discover credit card would go next,
and
right?
if that 18 months is close to expiring, if that's what you're saying,
Yeah,
um,
just to simplify it, let's assume it, I mean, it would be probably 6 months away from expiring, so we wouldn't have to put it in. But just for simplicity's sake, we
go
can
ahead and
just
take
put
care
these
of it.
two together, right?
Go ahead and take care of it.
So that's 14,276.
Yeah.
So this would be, so instead we're going to say this plus this plus this.
All
Okay.
right.
So we're
Okay.
back up. So now our balance is back up to 252.
Right.
Okay. 252, 544 roughly. Okay. So that pushes our payoff time from 9.5 years up to 10.5 years. So up, it added a year on. But remember, we just freed up some cash flow, right?
Just pay up the cash flow.
And it's probably actually more than this. But
Yeah.
right now it's showing $304, right?
Yeah.
So we can say minus this, minus this. So now we're down to only $4,000 in monthly expenses, right? So now we're down to 9 years once we
Hmm.
factor that in, right? So that's kind of again, the sort of double effect that we have to consider,
Yeah.
right? Every time we refinance something into the first lien HELOC, we increase the balance on the first lien HELOC, but we also free up more cash flow, right?
Hmm.
We decreased our expenses.
Wait, you free up
And
more cash flow for the long term, right?
right,
And so I think sometimes that gets missing. Like for instance, when we did the car, people are not understanding that yes, we paid it off in a year, but we freed up the cash flow on a
day one.
72-month loan,
Right,
right?
right,
So it would have been charging that for much longer than a year's time.
right, right. Correct, correct. So yeah, okay. So if we do that, if we look at these two together, that's 14,000. So how long does it take us to pay those off, right? So now we look at the equity gained, 14,000. We'll pay it off in 7 months.
Yeah. And
So we're
that's
so we're so we're 1 year and 7 months into the first lien HELOC, and we've paid off the car and 2 credit cards.
right.
And
It, it-
we're basically a year and a half in, because remember the car, it was really 11 months, not a year.
exactly.
So really we're 18 months in, and we've paid off a car and 2 credit cards.
Here's the coolest nuance of it too, is that each time you clear off one debt, paying off the next debt takes a lot less time because that's the snowball method. We're basically either taking the avalanche or the snowball method. And once we've taken care of one payment and now that increases the cash flow, now there's more cash going at that next debt that you're taking on. So you're going to notice that even if you have a bigger debt sometimes, that bigger debt doesn't take as long later on when you're paying it that it would have on your first cycle of doing it when everything else was a part of your expense ratio.
Right, right. And of course, these balances would be smaller. So
Right.
if we were being totally fair, that would be less, right? This would be, you could subtract 1,200 from that one, you could subtract 2,400 from that
Right.
one. So really, um, how do I want to do this? I'm gonna put
We're
another column
being
over
really,
here.
really conservative.
Well, so
Not
real, yeah, let's knock, I mean, really it'd be 1,200 off of this one. So really it'd be 4,500, and this one would be minus 2,400 because you'd be paying that 204 for um, a year, right? So really, if we're being honest, this is really more like 10,000 by the time we refinance it,
you're
right?
adding less to the loan. Yeah, correct.
So
Um,
call 10,600 is called 11,000. So really, we'd
mhm,
have it paid off in 5 months, not 7.
right. And there's another nuance there that I think might be really good for your sheet on the expenses too, is what is the actual payment and what is the minimum payment, right? Because most of the time, most people, especially that qualify for a first lien HELOC, are not avid minimum payment people,
Mhm, mhm.
right? It normally attracts a certain level of people because the credit score required to get it is 680, 700. So a lot of times I might have a client when I look at their debt profile, they may tell me that they're spending $5,000 on their debt per month. And then we start looking at it, the minimum payments aren't obviously, bringing them to that point, but they're putting so much extra on those minimum payments to try to meet those metrics and try to get rid of their debt as quick as possible. So this is a cool demonstration, but this is a bare bones demonstration for you guys. As you look at it, it's like we're actually being very, very conservative because most people are trying to get out of debt a little bit faster. They might throw an extra 400, extra 300 on there,
Mhm, mhm,
to try to
mhm.
do this, so
Yeah, and we don't have to keep going, but this is kind of how you do it, right?
right,
And then you just
absolutely.
attack the next one. Maybe that's the student loan, right? And the beauty of it is you have full optionality the whole time.
Hmm.
If you need to take out some additional debt for some reason, you can pull it out of your HELOC. If you decide you want to refinance a different debt, you can do it. If you want to do it in different order, no problem. There's total flexibility because of the two-way street that is the first lien HELOC, right? We're
Absolutely.
showing you a logical progression that makes sense where the way we're kind of doing it is we're starting with the loans, paying off the loans that free up the most cash flow, right? And moving down those systematically. That would
Yeah.
be one way of doing it. There are lots of other ways of doing it because oftentimes I find, as I'm sure you know, DeAndre, there's a huge psychological component too. So sometimes you want to attack the debt that's causing the client the most psychological pain, even if it might not be technically the worst debt or the one that
Yeah,
makes the most sense. If it
yeah,
gives them, frees up some peace of mind for them, it's going to help them to be successful, right?
yeah. Sometimes it's a debt that they just haven't found a way to get ahead of. Actually, it's like it's
Mhm.
just been around, lingering so long. It's like,
Mhm.
oh gosh, I don't know if I'm ever gonna finish this thing off. So yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from that standpoint. And this is a better option than refinancing the home and doing a cash out refi, right? So what Logan is showing you is kind of how when you have the first lien HELOC, you have the option to choose the ratio of how you're doing your cash out,
Right.
right?
Right. It's very
Uh,
flexible. It's a
where
very
it's
flexible
it's
tool.
not a lump sum that comes out at the top, and then that lump sum adds a tremendous amount of years to your loan. So sometimes we rob Peter to pay Paul on a cash out refi.